Welcome, viewers. Hello, everyone. Welcome to GeoPods. In this special edition of GeoPods today, we have the honor of hosting Mrs. Elizabeth Marabwa. She's the Chief Director, Programs and Projects Management Office at the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. Good morning, ma'am. How are you and how have you been doing?
Good morning, Pratyaksh. I'm very well. South Africa is a bit cold, although it's not comparable to European weather, but from our perspective, the temperatures are quite low.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. So, for our viewers, in this podcast, what we're going to do with Mrs. Elizabeth Marabwa is that we're going to be discussing about the state of affairs in the South African energy sector, along with the forthcoming fifth BRICS Youth Energy Summit, which is going to be there later this August. Ma'am, let's start with the energy sector in South Africa. Now, lately, there have been a lot of developments that have happened, particularly in the energy sector. Now, there are some ambitious plans to introduce the low carbon generation, while also, on the same hand, maintaining stability in the energy supply. If I were to ask you, what are some of the key challenges that do you define under the same banner?
Thank you for that question. In the first place, I just want to indicate that South Africa is what we call an integrated resource plan, which was promulgated in 2019. And the resource plan provides a map for the energy increase in energy generation capacity in the country, and it will be deploying various technologies. Some of those technologies are really geared on reducing the South African carbon footprint and ensure that we contribute to a low carbon economy globally. As you are aware, South Africa's energy is predominantly coming from coal, particularly the electricity. We do have a little bit of just under 2,000 megawatts coming from nuclear. Then currently, as from 2011, when the integrated resource plan was being developed, the country embarked on an ambitious program to increase generation capacity from various renewable energy. From a zero of from 2011, currently the country has over 6,000 megawatts, about 6 gigawatts of renewable energy, and procurement for more renewable energy is on course and has been gone through various bid windows, and the bid windows have been successful, and projects are actually being rolled out, and some are at various stages. So while I say it's an ambitious program, yes, but the country and the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy has been able to roll out that low carbon technology program, and it has also been able to balance it with what is happening in the coal sector. In the coal sector, the country also has been looking at clean coal technology. We have invested quite significantly in the carbon capture and storage pilot project, which allows the country to continue using coal, but in a responsible way. And this is what the country is doing, and it's going to assist us in contributing to climate change. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for outlining that, ma'am. If I were to, tell you how I see upon this is, our collective future depends upon if we can produce energy which is low carbon or clean energy in the future. So thank you for that. Now, ma'am, before we come on to the peculiarities of the summit, I would like to ask you that there has been or there is a lot of emphasis on energy access for the upcoming BRICS Youth Summit. Now, what role does South Africa play in making sure that the countries in the sub-Saharan Africa also have the access to energy?
Africa is under the African Union, has got an energy program, and there has been a commitment even through the United Nations that we need to have universal access to energy by 2030. And that universal access to energy is to make sure that it does not leave anyone behind. And so South Africa is a signatory to the United Nations and a signatory to the African Union. It is within its responsibilities to ensure that it supports energy access programs, first in the country, in the region, and in the African continent. In terms of the country, South African energy access is at over 82% currently. And the department is working aggressively to make sure that by 2030, we have universal access to clean energy. For those communities that are very far from the grid and it would be difficult, we have to connect them to the grid. We have already commenced off-grid technologies that are connecting most of those rural communities that are very remote from the grid to electricity through renewable energy, mini grids and solar power installations in those areas. Then in terms of the region, the first port of call for the South African region is the Southern African Power Pool. Through the Southern African Power Pool, energy ministers meet annually. And in those meetings, they encourage each other to make sure that we work towards universal energy access. We also work towards energy efficiency, and we also work towards energy poverty alleviation. So those programs help, and also is a place where South Africa is contributing as a result of the development of the power pool. We are sharing and trading energy within the region, and we are ensuring that countries actually contribute and support each other. We also even promote regional power projects to make sure that as a region we benefit. For example, we have our countries like Mozambique, they export energy, they have hydropower. Then you also have a big project in a Democratic Republic of Congo, which has got the ability to light most countries in Africa. South Africa is participating and ensuring that we support the Grand Inga project. Then we also have regional infrastructure projects that would allow the Southern African member countries to trade energy and ensure that we enhance our energy efficiency and energy security. And South Africa is again working within that within that association to make sure that we have energy access, energy security, and we work with regions. And these different power pools in Africa, they also interconnect and allow the different member countries to work with each other. Different power pools like Eastern African Power Pool, which is North African Power Pool, Western African Power Pool. They all member countries work together, and they also have even their regulators working together to ensure that if there is a trade and movement of energy from one region to another, we have aligned policies. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, that was quite a description of the plans that South Africa has for the energy access. Now, I would say that, generating energy, generating low carbon energy is not enough in itself, but what it requires is an expansive plan to provide the energy access to the whole of Africa. So that was there. Now, ma'am, apart from the energy, I would like to ask you a question on another factor on which you've been working upon, which is the youth. Could you tell us a little bit more about the youth energy landscape in South Africa, particularly when it comes to youth unemployment? How is South Africa looking to address these issues?
South Africa, as you have indicated, that we have an ambitious energy policy. We have indeed, in the past year, the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy has promulgated a regulation which allows companies to install a maximum of 100 megawatts without serious licensing requirements. The license would cost you less than maybe about 120 US dollars. Then if you identify any company that would want to have its own electricity generated and sold to that particular company, you can set up a company and then make an application and generate electricity and sell to those companies. As a result of that regulation, there are so many opportunities that have now emerged. Through those opportunities, young people can form companies and become EPC contractors that can be subcontracted by most companies that are now investing in the energy sector. Young people can also be employed as small developers that can put solar PV on homes. And the government is, in fact, provided an incentive to make sure that most of our own homes are using solar PV to generate electricity. We also have programs such as solar water heater, which is being promoted. And for that, we train young people to become assistant installers. Then we have an institution that is currently providing training for young people as solar PV technicians, wind turbine technicians, and all those opportunities. As government, we go out to the young people and tell them about those opportunities and encourage them to then move and get into the business as investors, as entrepreneurs, and as suppliers of different requirements, such as your labor, but technical labors for your technicians, solar PV installers, and so on and so forth. So we have a program that we are encouraging, and currently we are looking for funding to support those young people who also want to convert their careers to join the new and big industry that is emerging in the country, and for them also to contribute to the trajectory of our new energy program.
Okay, ma'am. Now, building on to that, you have a story of cooperation with the BRICS Youth Energy Agency and supporting the BRICS Youth Cooperation in the energy sector in particular. Now, why do you believe that it is important for South Africa and the African youth in energy?
We believe that the future of the energy sector lies in young people, and it is important to bring them in now to take leadership and learn and provide their insights on what they want to see as the future of the energy sector in South Africa, in Africa, and in BRICS member countries. It is important that we begin to incorporate the young people so that they can also assist in providing information and directing decision-making processes, because they are the custodians of the future. They are the leaders of the future. And the more we incorporate them in the decision-making processes, the more we listen to them, the more we allow them to play an active role. It is better for all of us. It is better for all of us as countries, as regions, as economic blocks, and globally as well. It's high time that we give space and audience to our young people so that they can also give us innovative ideas and guide the future as our future leaders.
Okay, ma'am, that sounds amazing. And as someone who would come in the young demography myself, listening to leaders like you, it is really very affirmative or positive on our part, because then the trust that the leaders like you bestow upon us for our future, that really helps us in striving for the better. Now, ma'am, now I would like to ask you something about the upcoming summit. Right. So could you tell our viewers about the upcoming BRICS Youth Energy Summit that is taking place for the first time in South Africa? The fact that this summit has now become a part of the official BRICS Chairship 2023 highlights its importance. But what are the key priorities of South Africa that you would set for the summit?
Thank you very much for that. South Africa is hosting the BRICS Summit. We are expecting as members from the BRICS member countries, but an invitation has been extended to the African young people as well, so that they can come and have a discussion on pertinent issues such as energy access in Africa, energy security globally, and also the importance of bringing not just young people, but also young girls, young women into the play of the energy sector, so that collectively we are moving forward with the contribution of both the young people and young women, and having an inclusive energy sector that is very strategic in the development, particularly now when the energy sector is pulled upon to ensure that it gives secure energy, to ensure that energy is accessible, to ensure that energy is affordable. So the main issues that the young people will be discussing is energy access, because we are aware that in Africa, 600 million, more than 600 million people have no access to energy. We are also aware that over 2.6 million households are not using electricity for cooking, but dependent on very hazardous uh, fuels, which can cause indoor pollution, which leads to most women dying prematurely because of indoor pollutions. So, with all those challenges, it is important for young people to come and discuss those issues and come up with recommendations to make sure that as a continent we alleviate the energy poverty that we have. We recommend technologies that are appropriate for our own mothers who are responsible for cooking and dying premature deaths, and that in the end, South Africa has so much energy resources. It should be in a position to use those resources to generate energy which is secure and sustainable for its own communities.
Okay, ma'am. Those were some of the important points that you highlighted, especially related to women, and because of the lack of energy access, them facing, unfortunately, some of them facing the premature death. So that was there. Now, ma'am, adding on to that, how do you see the role of South Africa in BRICS Youth Energy Cooperation, but especially in Africa, particularly after the summit?
I think we need to take the discussion after the summit to another level, where the young people can contribute, especially to the just energy transition discourse in the continent, to make sure that they give their ideas, they guide the discourse, and they make sure that countries go on the just energy transition in a way that is going to benefit the African continent, the African people, and the African communities, to ensure that we industrialize and we develop, and that the just energy transition, even the energy access itself, not only leads to creation of electricity, but it should contribute to job creation, it should contribute to industrialization, it should contribute to transformation of the economy. And those are the ideas that we would want to see coming from young people, so that the changes that we want to see are going to be inclusive and are going to lead to the transformation and economic development of the African continent. And those ideas should come from the young people. And that is the discourse I would like the young people to take forward and implement, not just talk about, but make sure that we drive such agendas. Thank you.
Okay. Ma'am, if I were to really think about that, the points that you've highlighted and the issues that you've spoken about, all of our collective future lies in the sustainable development of Africa, and in which comes energy, economy. So I really hope that South Africa, along with the whole of Africa, can work together for fostering the cause that we've been talking about in this podcast. Now, ma'am, before my last question, I know that you are one of the national leaders of the gender agenda in the energy sector. and among developers of the women empowerment and gender equality strategy for the energy sector. You have also launched the relative ministerial council. Could you tell us a few words about it?
Yes, we have in the country, fortunately, South Africa has enshrined the rights of all women, men, young, and children in its constitution. We have taken that uh, enshrined rights into the energy sector. And we have also the Department of Women, Youth and Peoples with Persons with Disability in the country, which also drives inclusive economic growth in the country. And given that from the energy sector perspective, as you know, energy is male dominated from every angle. And to make sure that it becomes inclusive, it was important to come up with an implementation strategy which would bring in women not only as people that make day-to-day decisions on the consumption of energy, but that they should also participate on the supply chain of energy sector and become entrepreneurs, become investors, become professionals, become leaders for companies, become board members. And to do that, we had the strategy, and the strategy is difficult to just have it is not good enough to have a strategy, but we also included an implementation plan which would be monitored by what we call the advisory council, which is a ministerial advisory council made up of women and men from various sectors of the energy, who then provide guidance to minister and advice on how best to ensure that we have effective implementation of the strategy. And there is also a buy-in from the sector and industry leaders with the assistance of the advisory council guided by the minister, also minister supported by our deputy minister.
Okay. Ma'am, while there are indeed a lot of strategies, a lot of talks about how to empower women, how to further the cause of the gender equality, I would say that under your leadership, what South Africa has been doing is it's really, I would, if I were to say it, it's really amazing because what it does is that because if we have to solve the issues for the women, solving it through the energy route serves a lot of purpose because it acts as a force multiplier. So that is what I would say on that. Now, ma'am, at last, could you give us your predictions about the role of the younger generation in their impact for energy landscape in South Africa in the upcoming decade?
Oh, sorry, I just missed your last question.
Yes, ma'am. I repeat it again. Uh, At last, could you give us your predictions about the role of younger generation in the impact of energy landscape in South Africa?
I think we already have a number of young people that have done well in the energy space. As I've indicated, we have got an independent power producer program. We have young people that already own um, power generating companies that are already operational, as much as also women that have already established their own companies. We have set a baseline for women in energy to particularly in the utility scale renewable energy. And we have also noted that 32% of women are already employed in the sector, and a significant number are board members. A significant number are also CEOs. We are going to track also the youth participation and inclusion. So we are looking forward to young people taking their role and being effective and being participatory across the energy value chain, not just only as employees, but as leaders, as investors, and as even researchers. We are targeting them to be in the research element of the energy value chain so that their participation is all inclusive and their influence is across the board. And with that, I foresee a situation where young people are going to very soon take leadership in the energy sector, because also the energy sector is rapidly changing, especially its technology. This allows young minds, young people to take a lead and a role. And I'm looking forward in my retirement to be able to look back and say, yes, indeed, those young people that we encouraged have become big leaders globally. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, ma'am. With that, we would wrap the podcast that we've had with you. And, but at last, if I were to say this, you talked about your retirement and, seeing whatever that you've been working upon materialize. So I hope, and that really comes true. So with that, we would wish all the best to you for the upcoming summit and for all the endeavors that South Africa and your department have been taking in the energy landscape for the whole of Africa. Thank you so much, ma'am. It's an honor to be talking to you.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity and would encourage that young people join the BRICS Summit, which would also be in a hybrid format. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye bye now.